In this video, we finally have a conclusion to the DeSantis versus Disney drama. Finally, we're going to break down their settlement. We're going to talk about it. We're also going to break down this clip from CNBC about Bob Iger and Disney. Very fascinating stuff. I got Mr. Seymour Duck and the Italiano with me today talking shop on this episode of OG 55. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of OG 55. Like I said, we're talking all about DeSantis versus Disney. We're going to talk about, we're also going to talk about this CNBC clip from the other day in regards to Bob Iger's performance and what have you. All of this leads up to the big annual shareholder meeting in just a few days. Crazy times surrounding Disney right now. But before I dive into this, I'm going to introduce my fantastic panel. We got the one, the only Mr. George, the Italiano, host of our Citrus Corner show here on the channel. George, welcome back, sir.
Thanks for having me back on. And yeah, this is definitely going to be a very juicy, sticky show. Definitely. I think we were all kind of anticipating of when, this battle in Florida between the entertainment mouse house and the politics would finally come to a head. So I think it's safe to say that pimple did pop for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Finally. We kind of stopped talking about it on the channel, not because there wasn't news to be reported. It was just it was basically like a legal tennis match. It's like they make a move, and it got kind of boring and kind of in the weeds. And if you're not a lawyer, excuse me, it's uninteresting. You know what I'm saying? Ooh, man, sorry. Got a little frog in my throat. Seymour Duck is back in the house. Mr. Duck, thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you for inviting me. And I think this is perfect. We're having a video before the shareholder meeting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Leading up into it, talking shop. That day is going to be absolutely wild. And we're definitely going to do a video with you and talk about the fallout or whatever happens at that meeting. But Mr. Seymour Duck, if you could let everybody at home know where they could find you on social media.
Oh, yeah. They can find me on X at Mr. Seymour Duck.
There he is. Make sure you follow Seymour. Incredible insight in regards to investing. He obviously talks a lot about Disney through that kind of like that financial lens, but he also talks a lot about Nintendo, and he's been looking for somebody to debate in regards to Nintendo. So if you're a big Nintendo fan and you want to talk shop, Seymour Duck is your man. So definitely follow him on X.
Yes, please, because I just keep hearing positive things, and I want to hear some negative things.
Right, exactly. You want to kind of dive into some juicy stuff, right? A little spice, So Ron DeSantis, the board, the Central Florida Tourism Oversight Board, I believe it's called, and Disney have come to a settlement, right? And all the headlines are, Disney folds, Disney caved, yada yada yada. And a lot of us were like, well, wait a minute, maybe not so fast. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not so cut and dry here, but this website, abovethelaw.com, kind of breaks it down. So we're going to kind of go over some of this stuff and talk about it. It says here that Ron DeSantis claims victory over Disney, and all he had to do was give Disney everything they wanted. All he had to do is give everything they wanted. Okay, so it says here, it began with Ron DeSantis swearing vengeance on Disney for mildly chastising his anti-gay people law. Now, look, to be fair, there are people who will say it's not anti-gay and this, that, and the other. So I understand the verbiage here. You know what I'm saying? It's subjective, I get. You know what I'm saying? But after detours into Libet of Sussex and the rule against perpetuities, remedial civil procedure screw-ups, and the United States Supreme Court sending a stray directly at DeSantis, the matter ends. Much like the DeSantis presidential campaign, not with a bang, but with a whimper. Now, here is something that's interesting. It says here, because Disney agreed to forfeit its headline-grabbing and hilarious deal with the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, then known as the Reedy Creek Improvement District, granting Disney functional control over the district until 21 years after the death of the last surviving descendant of King Charles, DeSantis supporters are framing the agreement as a victory. And I've seen this on Twitter. I know both of you gentlemen have as well, where we're seeing this kind of victory lap, like DeSantis won, they really stuck it to the mouse house. Seymour, before we kind of dive further into this article, what are your thoughts on that? I know you're pretty active on Twitter. You've seen this stuff. What are your thoughts on this kind of like this jump to like declare victory from the DeSantis side?
Is there a victory if there's not a prison built next to the park? Because I thought that was going to happen. Also, big taxes too. That didn't happen. None of these promises that I heard from him that Disney was going to get punished, none of it came. And I don't know how he won if all his promises didn't come true.
Right. No, exactly. I don't either. And this article kind of breaks it down, and we'll go into the details about that. But
and it's basically in the title. He won because he gave Disney everything that they wanted. So who really actually came on top?
Right. It's crazy. Go ahead, Seymour.
I was going to say, and I don't understand how Disney folded because they both settled. They both made an agreement saying, okay, we both agree that this is how it should be done. It's not like you agree what I say and you fold. No, they both came to an agreement and they both wanted to ensure that, the future for Florida and their parks, because they know that Disney parks in Florida is like one of the biggest moneymakers for Florida. And, if you don't have Disney, the economy is not going to be that great for Florida. And they know that. Everyone knows that. So It's better to work with them instead of going against them. And both parties are seeing that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think from the beginning, I've said this on camera. I've said this on Twitter. This whole thing with DeSantis was a political move. It was political posturing for his presidential campaign to set him up on the national stage. This whole thing against the war on woke, again, with Disney and all that. And, look, this settlement kind of shows that was indeed the case because his presidential campaign was an abysmal failure. Let's be honest. It was an embarrassment. And he can't run for governor again because he's termed out. So now he comes to the settlement agreement, which we're going to see, and I'm going to outline it in just a second, where he gave away a lot of concessions in this deal. And I think it's largely because he was never invested in running this district. He never really cared about the district or anything surrounding it. This was all about DeSantis's presidential campaign. He thought if he can stick it to the mouse house, he can get the nomination. And it didn't work out. So now it's like, what's the point here? You can have your toys back, Disney, is basically what this is. But we'll see. Let's dive into this. Okay, so, all right, give me 1 second. Let me scroll down a little bit more. Give me just a second. Okay, so the first prong, now this is in regards to what DeSantis has given up. The first prong of this settlement actually fell into place yesterday when DeSantis appointed Stephanie Kapepalausis. I'm probably mispronouncing your name, Stephanie. I do apologize. If you're yeah, Gesundheit. Yeah, exactly. Stephanie, I'll call her Stephanie K. How about that? So he appointed Stephanie K to run the district, replacing Glenn Gilzine, who DeSantis originally put in the job before an ethics panel ruled that he was serving illegally. Okay, Stephanie is a Disney applauded hire, having spent her career in the DeSantis orbit, shielding Disney from the governor's half-baked schemes, including carving them out of the big tech wokeness bill that the Supreme Court is about to strike down anyway. So I heard all these arguments about how the Mouse House had it so easy because they were carved out of this tech bill. I think the language in the bill was basically anyone that operates theme parks is they don't have to, it doesn't apply to them, right? That bill that gave Disney that special carve out was this woman who's now on this new board. Okay. So let's talk about how DeSantis won here. Okay. This is absolutely insane. So now, instead of being bossed around by board members like the guy who said fluoride makes kids gay, and yes, he did say that. I'll send all that link. I'll put all those links in the description. Crazy stuff. Disney has to deal with a known government ally who is almost certainly just warming her resume to become a Disney or Universal lobbyist down the road. Not an auspicious beginning for the DeSantis victory crowd. Seymour, your thoughts on this?
She understands how crucial Disney is to Florida's economy, and that's why you're seeing things like of her trying to shield away from all these tactics that DeSantis was doing for these tech, because the theme parks like Universal and Disney are crucial to their economy, and you don't want to get that pushback and have Florida's economy destroyed because you're putting so much restrictions on it. She knows that you have to work with these companies, and it's going to be good for the future for both of them, for Florida and for Disney, and also for Universal as well.
And honestly, to be honest, like the original appointees that DeSantis got together to run this district, I mean, so many people were either fired, they ended up walking out. I mean, it was like there were more runs out of this district than you find in somebody's shorts. I mean, it's like it was just ridiculous. So I think honestly, even to DeSantis, the kind of being frustrated of how many people that had to keep on getting replaced, it's like, okay, now's the time where, again, as you had mentioned, OG, it's like his terms are basically up, for governor. His race into the White House are done. So it's like, what more could he do? It's just basically going to give him just one giant headache to just keep on trying to battling the Moss House back and forth, because I think he got to see that Disney was not going to back down, because even Disney had a lawsuit against them, for which after they came to terms of agreement, they pulled out of their lawsuit. But Disney wasn't going to go quietly as a mouse, no pun intended.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And there are some stuff with that where it's interesting, because Disney's been fighting this board to get some public records released, and DeSantis's group was dragging their feet. It's also a funny coincidence that the settlement comes on the heels of that. Seems like maybe they were kind of avoiding some stuff, but it says here in the article, second, the deal doesn't just invalidate Disney's deals with the outgoing board, but also everything the new board has tried to do. Under the terms of the agreement, everything reverts to the state of play in 2020. Okay, under the old Disney board, and charges Stephanie K to run things from there. So Stephanie K, this Disney friendly, is running this board. I thought Disney, the Mouse House, had so much power. That's what DeSantis was arguing in the first place with this whole board. And now there's a pro Disney person running this thing, and we revert back to 2020.
And honestly, and I think, because even just to those notions alone, I thought was a joke when he said it has to the logistics to run this district, that you can't be in any kind of theme park or themed entertainment whatsoever. Then you're basically setting these people up to fail, because that makes them non-qualified in a sense, because I'm sorry, I get it, a business is a business, but theme parks and themed entertainment are run completely different than what you would say a corporate office in the sense of like where you're running, just to say, like Pepsi or Hershey's candy or what have you. It's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, no, exactly. It says here, as a term of the settlement, the new entity expressly forfeits its right to do the sort of critical mayhem they hope to accomplish, and indeed to quote unquote rather assist Disney. Okay, to assist Disney in securing the substantive benefits Disney wanted all along. Okay, this is a complete and total walk back. For the DeSantis shills or supporters or whatever to say this is a total victory lap for him is really ridiculous. Now, here's the thing. Our good friend Disney Glimpses said it perfectly on Twitter, where he said the first board was all Disney, basically, right? Let's be honest. And the second board was all DeSantis. And this board is more of a hybrid. I would argue it's a hybrid, but leaning more Disney. But at the end of the day, this is much more of a compromise. But I'm sorry, Seymour. What were you going to say, brother?
Oh, I was just going to say, everything's being reverted back, and even including we're talking about these credits and everything. So they're not paying their fair shares anymore. Remember that whole ordeal that Ron DeSantis was going to say Disney's going to pay their fair share. They're going to pay their taxes, their special access. all of that is still intact. None of that is getting removed, and none of that is going to be removed.
Right.
So I'm very confused because I'm seeing a lot of people on X not mentioning this, or not even mentioning Stephanie as well. None of this, and apparently Disney still folded. Huh? Well, what's happening here? Because Disney getting what they wanted.
Yeah, exactly. They got what they wanted. Is it as good as it was before? Probably no, but it's definitely way better than it could have been if, I mean, this is definitely a huge win for Disney. It's wild. You're absolutely right, Seymour. It says here, as a term of the settlement, the newly expressed. I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself. And then it says here, finally, the agreement takes the unusual step of not ending all the pending litigation and releasing everyone from liability. The federal lawsuit Disney agrees to seek, and the district will not oppose permission from the court to defer briefing in Disney's pending federal appeal, captioned as Walt Disney Parks and Resorts, yada, yada, yada. So basically, Disney didn't give up the option to move forward with the federal lawsuit. So this is basically the leverage going forward. If you mess with us, and we will proceed with this thing. What are your thoughts on this, George?
Yeah, Disney is. I love how they handle like litigations and all that kind of stuff, because it's like they do it where it's known. It's like it's in the public domain, but they do it very subtly. They do it in a clean cut manner, and it's basically Disney saying, you F with us, we'll F with you back. It's like we're not gonna become a kind of like a corporate hostage over this. And it's like, then, but you know what? If you're willing to work with us, we'll meet you halfway. But just down the road, it's just. Let's not have this happen again, shall we? Sort of thing.
Yeah, nice way to put it. Mr. Seymour Deck, what are your thoughts on this kind of keeping the door open on this federal lawsuit?
It gives them the upper hand, but in a good way, so that everyone's intact and everyone is playing fair game. Because right. One party can go out, like the previous rules with the board, right? And Ron DeSantis, their main tactic was to destroy Disney. But now that you have this upper hand from Disney, I feel like everyone will work together, ensure that, the parks will improve, the Florida economy will improve with that intact. And the one thing I want to state is that, does this mean that their benefits that the employees were getting with the Disney parks are back now because everything's reverted back to 2020?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's a good question. I believe
that was like the biggest issue that everyone was talking about. I saw all kinds of debates on X saying that it's unfair, that shouldn't be happening, but now they're getting that back.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Seymour. They're getting that back, and I heard that. I even heard people accused say that was illegal. It was considered bribery. So what happened to law and order, huh? I thought a lot of these folks are all about law and order, right? I guess that, so we're reverting back. We're reverting back to that. That's interesting. Very, very interesting point, Seymour. Disney gets a new friendly. Okay, so in other words, Disney gets a new friendly negotiating partner. All the board's rules tossed. A commitment that the entity can't mess with the interests Disney cared about. And the parties agree that the company can maintain its most powerful lawsuit as a cocked gun to the temple of the new entity to be invoked if the negotiations don't go Disney's way. It's crazy.
So it's basically if we don't get what we want, it's we'll continue, and they will continue this battle, so to speak, but they actually have it in writing, and they're both sides are in terms of agreement on it. So so as Seymour said, Disney has the upper hand on this. Yes. And DeSantis kind of backed himself into a corner where it's just going to keep on going around in a circle, or as you say, OG, it's like a back and forth tennis match. It's just like, it just keeps going on. And again, like, what's the point that DeSantis has to make after basically his long-term goals are completely shuttered? So it's,
yeah, this whole thing, I'm telling you, it was a political maneuver from DeSantis. I've said this for the longest time. I've said for the longest time that this was all about his political aspirations to become president and to get clout, as the kids call it, right, on the national stage. And so what do? You go to war with a global company. You get those headlines. So it's not just Florida. You see DeSantis in the news in Iowa and Nevada and nationwide now, right? So that's what this whole thing was about. So when his presidential campaign, flatlined and was a complete and total failure, he saw no point in continuing this. So you know what? We're going to settle and just whatever you guys want to do is fine, because now there's no point.
No, I have a question for you both, if either one of you know. It's kind of on the subject, but semi off of it. But when they were still going through this ongoing battle where Iger kind of made the statement, kind of pinpointing to, DeSantis saying, you know what, it's Disney, we're the ones that bring in all the revenue to the state of Florida. We bring the tourists, we bring the vacationers, yada, 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 and we're willing to, put forth, $17 billion into the Walt Disney World Resort. Does that number still stand with that, or was that more just on Iger's playbook in that moment to kind of give a little jab to DeSantis?
I don't know. It's kind of iffy because he said the 17 billion, but then he announced, what was it? 40 billion, 60.
It's a 60 billion, but then it's it would be 30 billion essentially that gets put forth to the expansions,
right? But that's for the parks division, so right. I don't know where the 17 fits in, because they're not going to spend half of that at Walt Disney World.
Yeah,
there's no way. So I don't know. The 17 billion might have been a figure that they had before. It could have been, like you said, like a negotiating tactic, a public negotiating tactic. It could have been a lot of things. Because they announced the 60 billion, I think the 17 just earmarked just for Walt Disney World is not on the table anymore. I could be wrong. I don't know. I've heard anything about that though in the longest time. So yeah, it's interesting. Seymour, are you familiar with that? The 17 billion? It was like, when was that, George? Like maybe like a year and a half ago?
Yeah, it had to be. Yeah, because he mentioned that during, was it one of the quarterly earnings? He mentioned that.
I think so, yeah. And that was at the heat of like the whole DeSantis thing. I think it was game playing on Iger's part, probably, because he used it as a way to say, hey, we were going to spend 17 billion, but because DeSantis is playing games with us, I don't know now. You know what I'm saying? He was like kind of, I think it might have just been kind of playing to DeSantis, So I don't know.
And even then, if they need more money, they could always add more money.
Right. Exactly. So interesting stuff. I'm just glad that this whole Reedy Creek nonsense is over. It's just gone on for way too long. I'm really happy for our friends at Walt Disney World. They can finally, because I do think that a lot of the stuff that the lack of announcements, the lack of concrete stuff being announced for Walt Disney World, a lot of that did stem from this whole political uncertainty out there, in Florida. So now that this is behind us, I think it's a real positive step for fans. Now Disney knows what they have to work with. The dust has settled. I've said this many times. Now we can move forward. And I think we're going to see, I think also it was very important for two reasons to get this done before that annual shareholder meeting in a few days. It was very important. Number one, they can kind of brag about it now at the meeting. Number two, it also gives them now the ability to sort of announce stuff at D23 with a little more freedom, because now they know what they're working with. So overall, huge win. And it's a huge win for Floridians. It's a huge win for the theme park industry. And just thank goodness this nightmare has finally ended. I was so sick of talking about it. You know what I'm saying? The Reedy Creek stuff. It was crazy for a while there. So I'm really glad that it's finally over and we can finally move on now. Now let's talk a little CNBC. This is interesting. Now, Seymour, you brought this to my attention. This is fantastic stuff, dude. Give me 1 second while I bring it up. Okay, so it's only 2 minutes. So let's go ahead and play. I'll play the whole clip. And then, Seymour, I'll start with you at the end of the clip and we'll kind of talk about it. So this is from CNBC. Here we go.
Jeff, let me ask you this. I mean, as an outsider, I look at this argument and I can't decide whether this is about two competing visions of what Disney ought to be, or if this is just a straight up power struggle between two individual people. What's your take?
It's very clear. There's a genuine villain here. There's a genuine hero here. Bob Iger is is the wizard.
Jeff, I mean, that's pretty unfair. A hero and a villain? I mean, we're all professionals. We're all in the industry.
Wait.
We're all trying to get our best returns for our money.
Wait a second.
That's absurd.
Simon, hold on. Simon, let's let Jeff finish his point.
Simon, well, hold on there, Simon. Don't be so simple. You should just wait and let me finish my point. Is your 20-page report has nothing but page numbers on it. You did no analysis. As you admitted, all you did was listen to people. You get out of the echo chamber of rumors, and you're sort of caught in this groundless gossip. He is a wizard that opens up the door of the Magic Kingdom with genuine magic, whereas Nelson Peltz is a failing financier who basically is practicing parlor illusion tricks. He's sleight of hand. You talk about his performance, Simon. You must not have done the analysis fully. And we've run this past Nelson Peltz, and he's not disputed it. 80% of his investments, 80% of the boards that he's on have been underperforming the Dow dramatically, the S&P dramatically. And in fact, the Wall Street Journal simply corroborates this, that they've been at least 4% for years under their entire portfolio. This is why he has a massive flight. 40% of his investors have left, Simon. Why do you think that is? He's had to actually shutter his UK funds. His son-in-law quit. Things aren't going well for Trian, but they're going very well for Disney, and that's what you miss here. Disney is the #1 outperforming Dow stock. Yes, because what you might think of the outperformers are not on the Dow. He's the #1 outperforming Dow stock. He's towering over everybody in the media business. He did last round, and he's now. He's up 30%. Where's Paramount? Down 40%.
Wow. Okay, so interesting stuff here. Now, Seymour, you shared with me a graph. I'm going to go ahead and put the graph up, and then I'm going to go to you to kind of take over. So we just heard from them. Here's our graph. Oh, you know what? Give me a second. I might have to kind of, I left out, I got to make it a little smaller so we can see Paramount. Okay, there you go. Seymour, take over, sir.
Oh, so basically that guy on CNBC was me last time I came on this video, where I was very frustrated with all these false narratives about Bob Iger when he has the track record of being, for at least for the shareholders, of being good. And it blew my mind because, like, right here at the screenshot, year to date, Disney is outpacing Netflix, Comcast, Warner Brothers, Paramount. It doesn't show Fox, but it's Fox as well. And you see this, and you even see within the charts. I don't do technical analysis, but you can see where there's an uptrend for Disney and an uptrend for Netflix. Those were their earnings. And then there you see a downtrend for Comcast, and then it flattens out. And then you see a downtrend for Warner Brothers, and you see a downtrend for Paramount. So it's like Bob Iger, I hear a lot of people saying that, oh, their earnings call, everyone's being fooled. They're not. Because it's showing here that the shareholders are voting with their wallets, and they're buying in because they're showing results that they like. They're showing results, and they're being very shareholder friendly. And this is not even including the $3 billion buybacks that's not even implemented yet. So the stock's going to get even higher. And then you have the 50% increase in dividends that's going to happen. So people are going to buy in before that happens. And, some people say, oh, but they're going to sell off after the proxy battle. No, because of those catalysts are still there. I don't think it might be a small sell-off, but I believe that those catalysts are still intact for that purpose. And you will see an uptrend for Disney. Disney has been improving. Disney and Bob Iger's track record shows. And there's a lot of things. Yale did a study on Bob Iger and Disney, and even the companies that he bought, Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilms, Fox, right? He bought Pixar for $7.4 billion. Now it's worth over $40 billion. And then he bought Marvel for $4 billion. Now it's worth $13 billion. And then he bought Lucasfilm for $4 billion. Now it's worth $12 billion. And then he bought Fox for $71 billion, right? Sold some assets, and now it's worth $74 billion. So it's what Bob Iger hasn't had the success? His first term was 579% in the stock. And then he came back and it's 30%. The only time the stock went down when it was Bob Chapek was CEO. So why are we saying this false narrative of him? I'm sorry. I know people say I'm a pixie duster on X, and they're saying oh, you're into Disney. I actually sold my Disney shares because I believe in Nintendo even more. And yet, for some reason, they think because I have to lie and give this false narrative that Bob Iger is doing bad. No, I'm not going to lie. The data's there.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything I've been saying, it's there.
Exactly.
Now I feel like I'm on CNBC.
Okay, Seymour. Now, that was good what you said. Now, can you tell us how you really feel?
No, well said, Seymour.
Yeah,
well said. Yeah, no, it's crazy. The narratives out there where it's like this is like a sinking ship. Is like, well, what's everyone talking about? Like, look, there's no doubt that the Walt Disney Company has challenges right now, but it's like this is not what it's being portrayed.
But it's right
as.
in front of their eyes. It's
exactly.
like I mean, you can't tell me that these people don't see what's literally right in front of them, but yet they're turning the cheek and saying, you know, Iger's not successful. Iger, isn't doing well for the company. Then I don't know what you're looking at, but what we're looking at must be two completely different things.
I think we should. I mean, look, you want to tap into Treon's record? Because Seymour, you want to talk a little bit about that because that's a whole other ballgame, right?
Yeah, and like in the CNBC video, he was talking about that Treon. They weren't very successful in the companies that they're like on the board for, and in fact, they were on the board for GE, and they fell so long that it took about over I think 7 to 10 years just to recover to the same point where they became on the board of the Tran was on the board for GE, and it's like that kind of track record doesn't show that you can run a board. And like all the other ones, they've been down under the S&P, and the S&P you don't need much to beat. You only need like 9 to 12% depending on inflation and whatnot. But like if the company that you're on the board for is not outpacing that, that's not good. And to be honest, like I mentioned before with Bob Chapek, that's the time when and COVID, that's when the stock dropped. But the time when the stock went to $200, and a lot of people don't want to talk about this, is that's when interest rates were at $0. The Fed was pumping money into the economy like it's nothing, like it was candy, it was just free, right? And they were just kept pumping in the money. Every every company was going up. Even companies that were worth nothing, there were skeleton companies were going up. And Disney parks were closed. Disney was at its worst at $200. I even sold at $185, and I felt a little bad because I'm like, oh my God, it's going up $200. But then I'm like, no, the company's it's not worth that valuation. People are pumping companies all over the place. Even Tesla was at $450 back in 2022. But then inflation, interest rates came in, and now all the stocks went down, and now everything's being normalized, and now Disney is normalizing now with the changes with Bob Iger, because a lot of these companies, like even Meta went down to its 5 years low. I think even down to its like 9-year low. And what the company had to do was make these changes for these interest rates in place. Bob Chapek was not that guy for that. He kept spending money like crazy, and Bob Iger's your guy. And the unfortunate truth is that the lack of skills from Bob Chapek is what brought down the stock. And he was spending money like crazy on Disney Plus. And now, Bob Iger's looking for cost saving measures, quality versus quantity, merging Hulu into Disney Plus, and leaning into your biggest moneymaker, the parks.
Right. No, well said. Well said. Yeah, it's wild. It's wild, and I love the people that are out there saying like, the merging of Disney Plus and Hulu was a bad idea, but it's like, but that's what Peltz wants to do too. Like that, I don't understand that. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy, and I think it's great. Actually, I think it's a great idea, and I think that honestly, the thing too with the whole Hulu Disney Plus merger is that there's parental controls on there, and Hulu is its own tile. You know what I'm saying? So they're not just putting like, the handmade tale next to like, Dumbo or something. It's done in a I think in a respectful way, a responsible way. So it's just, I don't know. Now I want to talk to you guys a little bit. Before we go, I want to talk to you both about, we got the annual meeting on April 3rd, right? CalPERS, I think that's what it's called, through their support behind Nelson Peltz. I think yesterday, actually. It might have been today. I don't know. But but very recently, they threw their support behind Nelson Peltz. So, Seymour, I'll start with you, man. Like, what do you think right now? Where do we stand with this whole proxy fight? Like, do you still feel pretty confident that Iger's got this, the board's got this? Are you kind of getting a little bit like, hey, maybe it'll be close, maybe Peltz might get a seat? Where do you kind of stand a few days out?
That support is meaningless because you're the biggest holders that you need to convince is BlackRock and Vanguard, and they're like 0.01%. They're not even that big within that. Even New York Retirements was on Bob Iger's side, and people were messaging me, and I'm like, yeah, that's nothing. It just shows that your support, but their votes don't really matter. The votes that really mattered was George Lucas, when it's rumored to have a bigger voting shares than Tran itself in Peltz. So it's like those votes matter because Tran is in the top 10 of the shareholders. So if George Lucas outpaces them, that makes a dramatic change in the votings, in the scale of votings. So these small guys, they don't make a lot of difference. And you're seeing a lot of support that are not Disney shareholders. So you see, this is good for Peltz, but it's a small scale. You need the big guys to come in and support him.
So I have a question for you, Seymour. So when George Lucas outwardly had spoken that he's in support of Bob Iger and the Walt Disney Company for them to sustain as is with the board members and what have you. So when ISS then spoke up in their regards to Peltz, even though that they're a higher end company that has a lot of shares, is it still less of amount, obviously, to George Lucas? So would it even matter in a sense? I guess that's what I'm asking. Like, even if ISS did, obviously they did, in favor of Peltz, but when George Lucas kind of made his statement, did that just basically put the nail in the coffin no matter who would come out and back up Peltz?
I mean, like, for all we know, George Lucas could have changed his mind after that support from ISS, but we don't know. But unless he give us an update, but as of now, all we can do is give his word, and his word is worth a lot because of his voting shares. So that would put a lot for people, because right now you have ISS, who isn't Disney shareholders, right? They're just a proxy. And where Glass Lewis as well, right? Glass Lewis is like 28%, and then you have ISS doing the rest, and then you have a smaller ones that have been supporting Peltz, but they're so small. It's like they own 90% of the market, Glass and ISS, so it doesn't even matter for them. But yeah, you have those two, and I feel like the Disney shareholders are the big shareholders are the ones who's voting for Disney and Bob Iger, and those, to me, feels like it's more they give it more push for Bob Iger to win than Peltz's, because all I see is what Jim Cramer.
Yeah.
Like, I don't see a lot of actual big shareholders voting for Peltz. I see big companies, but they don't own Disney. And then you see JP Morgan, they own Disney. Then you see, you have the ex-CEO of Morgan Stanley on the board, and also the succession team for Disney. So it's like, why wouldn't they vote for Disney and the current board? And
well,
I was just going to say, yeah, I just see positive things for Bob Iger. But, since ISS, things could change. People can be influenced in their votes. And I don't believe any votes that I hear that are leaked or anything until the actual official numbers have been released.
And people can vote or change their vote up to April 2nd.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and a couple of things. I'm glad you brought up that Wall Street Journal situation with the Peltz is in the lead, or he's ahead of that one board member. We'll talk about that in a second, Seymour, because that's interesting. I really want to get your opinion on that. But the other thing too is like the Apple, Steve Jobs' widow. I forgot her name. I'll call her Miss Jobs. I do apologize, but she's got to have a ton of shares. I don't know. I mean, she's got to, because he had a huge stake in the company before he died. And a lot of that went to her, I'm sure. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he was a big investor in Pixar when Lucas Films owned them, and they sold it off to Disney. And Steve Jobs got those shares in return. and I'm sure like just like George Lucas, I'm sure they kept him for a very long time.
Yeah. Now let's talk about that Wall Street Journal article, because it was released a couple days ago, and it said sources close to the situation or sources familiar with the matter, something like that, is saying that Peltz is in the lead for that board seat, right? Now, here's the thing with that. I've been following politics for years and years and years, and just through my experience of following like politics and these articles that come out about politicians and what have you. Whenever I see sourcing like that, where it's like a person familiar with the matter or someone close to the situation, my antenna go up. It's typically BS. And that's just my experience. And that's just what I've noticed. I've seen it a lot with like CNN. They do that a lot. A lot of the stuff that's sourced like that typically doesn't pan out. Not to say that Peltz isn't going to get a seat. He might, you never know. Maybe the numbers that Wall Street Journal is reporting are accurate. It could be. But in my experience, when there's a flimsy sourcing like that, a person close to the matter, typically it's not really, it's not rock solid. I'll say that. But that's just kind of where I stand with it. But Seymour, you also saw that article. What are your thoughts on that? That Peltz is in the lead, supposedly.
I hear that all the time, just even when presidential candidates running. And I've been told that Donald Trump was not going to win, but then he won. And then I was told that he was going to win versus Joe Biden, and he didn't win. So I don't trust any of these numbers, including even box office numbers, right? They have all this data, and it's still not accurate. I've been told that Barbie was going to be a flop, and that didn't happen. And then I was told Mario wasn't going to be as big as successful, and it did happen. So it's like these numbers don't match what they were saying, and I don't believe any of this, because at the end of the day, I'm only going to trust the numbers that are official. When people tell me these facts that I see, I only go with the numbers that are, filed from the SEC. I don't like these numbers that people are telling me on X that has nothing to do with the actual numbers. So if somebody's telling me these are the numbers and they're in the lead, we don't know nothing about these. We don't know who voted. We don't even know if like George Lucas has voted, nothing. And it's like, okay, well, 22% of what? Like if Peltz already gave his votes in, right, and no one else gave their votes, and then it's all meaningless.
It's meaningless, and it's like the whole thing. Like, you're right. Like I remember all a person familiar with the matter, all the reports, and all the articles that came out about the Mueller report. You guys remember the Mueller report years ago? And all that stuff never panned out. A person familiar with the matter or sources close to the situation. None of that stuff ever panned out with that Mueller report.
It's probably Peltz's neighbor.
yeah. But it's just like, and that's the thing. It's like, that's why when I see stuff like that, when I read that article, that Wall Street Journal article, and I see that sourcing, I'm like, you know what? I don't buy it. And like you said, Seymour, what if that 22% represents, Peltz's stuff, or you don't know what votes were counted is what I think you're trying to say, right, Seymour? And that makes all the difference. It's like in politics, right? Like when you see a state, like on election day, let's say California, right? It's Trump versus Biden, and you're watching the news, and there's like who's in the lead. A lot of times it'll show maybe like for California, Trump's in the lead in California because they counted a red county first. So Trump's leading because the first county to be counted was a pro-Trump county. But there's no way Trump's going to win California. So they didn't count the overwhelmingly blue stuff yet. So that's kind of what this is like with this whole Peltz thing, is they could have counted, if it's true even, who knows, but they could have counted the Peltz people or whatever first. And so that's why you're getting that, and it's they haven't counted, like you said, George Lucas and these other people. So huge grain of salt. And I really I just gotta say straight, I don't buy it. I gotta be honest, I don't buy it. So we'll see. But we'll see how it pans out on Shareholder Day. Now, Seymour, do you think it'll be close? Or do you think, because you think it'll be close, or do you think it's gonna be Iger's gonna have some room with the final vote?
I was when before the ISS, I was like, oh, Iger got this in the bag. Everything's good because George Lucas, all the big guys are coming in. But right now, I do believe that Bob Iger is going to win, and the Disney company and the current board. on the fact that ISS was only half there and not the full for the board. They didn't mention any of the things that they wanted within the company except for the succession plan. And that's where I believe is where it's going to fail for Peltz and Jay Rizzullo. I keep thinking of the artist.
Jason.
Yeah, I keep saying that, but it's not Jason Derulo. It's Jay Rizzullo. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. No, but I can see how it would. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and that's where I think it falls apart, because you're getting these guys who are 100% there for Bob Iger and the board, not 50%, not 25%, where you're getting 50%, maybe 25%, because you're only getting Peltz on the board, but you're not agreeing with any of the other ideas they gave, and none of the ISS net, nothing about it. Glass Lewis did 100% agreed with everything that Bob Iger and Disney's doing, and the current board. So that's where I think they're going to succeed because of that. If ISS gave their full support, then that would have changed, and I think that would have been close, and where Peltz could win. But I don't think that's going to happen because they didn't give that full support. You're getting a half-baked idea instead of a full one. So I don't think they're going to win. But I could be wrong, because I don't know who's going to vote. But the one thing I would like to emphasize is that Vanguard and BlackRock, their number one thing is to vote for the current the board and for what the current company wants to do. They don't want to go against it. They're not for proxy battles. So they send out emails, and they always influence their shareholders saying, hey, this is what we like to do. But they have started new things where you can express your opinions on the votes, so that if you want to vote for Peltz, you can. But they prefer you not to go against the company. So there is that. And a lot of people seem to not want to talk about that. But that's what they do. They block BlackRock, Vanguard, even Value Act as well, right? And they don't like going against the board. They don't like going against Disney, and I think that's where it's going to push it. You're going to see the votes from BlackRock and Vanguard come in, and then it's all good. But I could be wrong, because nothing's 100%.
Absolutely, I would agree with you. I think Bob Iger on the board will squeak this one out for sure. But like you said, you just never know. You know what I'm saying? It's possible. Peltz gets that seat.
It's not over yet, so you can at the end of the in a few days we could see these big supporters coming in for Peltz, and everyone's changing their votes. We don't know, but at the current moment, or what I see, I don't believe he's going to win.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, George?
Yeah, I think, it's not over until it's over. That, it could kind of go either way. You just kind of, look what's in front of you at the moment, like Seymour said, and just kind of, feel for it. And, of what I'm seeing right now, I see the favor leaning more towards Bob Iger and the current board in the Walt Disney Company. But yeah, I mean, anything can change on a flip of a dime, and it's like, it can either be in Disney's favor or it may not. So we'll find out on April 3rd for sure. And I believe, Seymour, you said it'll actually be announced before the actual shareholder meeting starts.
They usually tend to do that, but they could always change it up.
Okay.
But usually every shareholder meeting that I'm at, they do it at the front to get the boring stuff out, and then we talk about the juicy stuff later, right? Yeah.
Interesting. Now, Seymour, I want to talk to you. We talked privately about it, but I kind of want to talk to you about it because, okay, so let's just say Peltz is able to squeak this out. Let's just say he gets a seat on the board. I don't think Rizzullo is going to get it, but let's just say Peltz gets a seat on the board. What happens with Iger and all that? Like, what happens now going forward with this? If Peltz, assuming Peltz does get that seat.
To be honest, if the current Bob Iger that I see now, he could change, his feelings for Peltz and everything, I think he would leave the company. I really think he would. I don't think he wants to work with someone like Peltz for that and see the company get destroyed. I think he rather would just leave.
And when you say leave, Seymour, you mean like an immediate walkout, like resign right then and there, or more so give a statement saying like my term as CEO is going to be shortened.
Yes, I think it's the second one. I don't think he's going to go right away. No, that would be terrible. No, but I think what's happening is that I don't think he can work with Peltz, and he in his mind, I believe that he's going to think that the company's going to go down, and he doesn't want to be part of it. If the Bob Iger that I see now, he could change his mind and be like, I'm willing to work with Peltz, like he did with Florida, right? If we get that Bob Iger saying, oh, I'm willing to work with Peltz, but I don't get that impression from him. I get that impression that he doesn't want to work with
Now, how much control really would Peltz and even just say Rizzullo, because if I'm guessing it's like a buy one, get one, if you get Peltz, you're going to get Rizzullo.
Well, not necessarily.
No, you would think so, but it's not. Like even ISS is not even giving support for Jay Rizzullo.
Okay, so Rizzullo can kind of even he was thrown into this like a pawn, really. It's
like one of those Disney henchmen.
Yeah. Okay, so even just say Peltz or Peltz Rizzullo, whatever. Even if it's just him, or say it is Peltz or Rizzullo, that's still 10 against 2 or 11 against 1 on the board. So would Peltz really have that much control that it really wouldn't be in too much of his favor? So is he already kind of setting himself up for failure in the end? Or is he more so just doing this as just a blank statement to say, I overcame Bob Iger and the Walt Disney Company. I have a seat on the board, not really even having the company's interest at heart, which we already believe that anyway. But like what would be Peltz's MO to get on this board if majority is going to roll against either 10 to 2 or 11 to 1?
Well, his MO is to go on the board of the company, pump the stock, and then a few years later sell it and then leave the board. That's his MO. He done it for many of the companies that he was on the board for. And I feel like that's why Bob Iger would leave, because he's not there for the company. He's there to make short-term profits. And I think that's why he brought in Jay, to make it look like, oh, I'm with Disney. See? Because I'm bringing someone previously from Disney. Even though I think you shouldn't bring anyone besides the CEO to be on the board of Disney who previously worked on Disney. It should be a very neutral thing. But that's just me. But a lot of people, even Vanguard and BlackRock, thinks that it should be a very neutral board. You shouldn't be bringing anyone. And that's why a lot of people don't want Peltz on this, because guess who's supporting him? Who gave him all his shares?
Exactly. Perlmutter. And he that's the thing too that bothers me, because Perlmutter, it's one thing to have like a person who's I don't agree with Iger on this. I'm going to push back on Iger. That's fine. You know what I'm saying? It's healthy. It's checks and balances. I mean, that's fine. But when you have a guy like Perlmutter who clearly has an axe to grind with Bob Iger, it's a personal vendetta. I don't want that energy anywhere near this company. That's not going to be constructive in any way. And that's who Peltz is working for. That's who Peltz is using, like you said, using his shares. You know what I'm saying? It's just not a healthy situation,
And, he had a proxy fight with Pepsi, with Hugh Johnson, and, trying to get on the board. And they made an agreement to get someone from Tran to be on the board and not him. And then, 2 years later, they sold their shares.
Wow.
I thought you were there to improve the company. You know what he wanted to do for the company? He wanted to spin off Pepsi for snacks and drinks, or merge with another company. Like, this is the type of things you don't think of if you're loyal to the brand, if you're with the company. Imagine if those tactics happened at Disney. Let's spin off, Blackwell's wanted those tactics. Let's spin off the parks and the streaming and all this. No, in the movies, no, we don't want that. We want everything, because Disney is a great company that caters worldwide with this flywheel. And I don't think that should be happening. And I see that a lot with Peltz. And I see it a lot about selling. He even sold just last quarter. Just now for Disney. That he doesn't give me the attitude of I'm here for Disney long term. And also he's getting old, so it's what is he fighting for?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's crazy, man. Yeah, he just sold, right? I think that was in December, I think, or something.
Yeah, it was revealed that he sold. And some people are like, oh, well, it's not a lot. And then they'll bring up Bob Iger sold. I'm like, Yeah, but Bob Iger was retired when he sold. Right? he had the right to sell. He's not part of the company anymore. You can sell. But if you're in a proxy battle and you're saying I'm going to improve the company, but then you sell, that's not a good look. And it's not. And like CNBC video said, all the board, the companies that he's in the board, majority of them, underperformed the S&P, and Disney is outperforming it. So it's like, why do we need Peltz anyways? If what Bob Iger is doing is working, because it's every term he's been in, the first and second has been going up, giving friendly shareholder value, like the $3 billion buybacks and the increase in dividends. And I'm sure you'll see more of that coming through, especially when you have Morgan Stanley on the board, right? The ex-CEO. You have Hugh Johnson as a CFO for Disney, coming from Pepsi. That's like a huge deal, and a lot of people don't talk about it. You can see their interviews on CNBC, and it makes me smile because these guys are really smart, right? And they're not taking the BS that CNBC gives them. Because, with Bob Iger always going on there, they always, being them snakes and giving them the hard questions to make them look bad. But these guys don't take it. They've been here before, and you have this, and then you have an activist investor already with you, Value Act. I think the right now is perfectly fine going forward. Even if Bob Iger leaves, they have everyone intact to keep everything in place. We just need a really good CEO, and everything will be, complete its circle.
Yeah, no, well said, Seymour. Well said, brother. And the thing too with the succession plan is, I'm a little frustrated with there's a lot of these calls to, and look, and I know ISS is one of them and stuff, and I don't understand this rush to like pick somebody. Like, I understand, like, obviously we don't want to like extend Iger's contract again and again and again. I don't want that, you know what I'm saying? But the rush to kind of throw Chapek in there is what kind of got us into this mess a little bit, right? Like, that was a huge issue for the Walt Disney Company, that Iger sort of just threw this guy in there. It was kind of like, it felt very willy-nilly. I don't want to just pick someone to pick someone. Like, if it takes a little time to pick the right person, I'd rather take a little time and pick the right person. So this whole idea of like, well, they haven't found anybody yet. It's like, but I mean, like, let's go through the process and do this right this time.
And then also on top of that, they're saying, okay, well, here are the top 4 candidates. It's like, okay, well, then you're narrowing your choices down. Kind of have like a open-minded, optimistic viewpoint that it doesn't necessarily have to be these 4. Like, look even beyond, as we said it how many times on the channel, look beyond than just whoever is in the company, because it worked well with Eisner and Wells. One came from Paramount, one came from Warner Brothers. It's like, you don't necessarily always have to have someone that was ingrained in the Walt Disney Company.
Yeah, and I would be very weary, very cautious about these articles that come out and say so-and-so is, on the short list or leading the succession race, this, that, and the other. Because these kind of articles come out all the time, and a lot of times they don't really pan out. You know what I'm saying? Because I remember Susan Arnold. Well, not Susan Arnold. Christine McCarthy was on. I remember there was an article, I think it was like Variety or one of the Hollywood trades, saying that she was on the short list to be a possible CEO replacement. And look what happened with that, right? So I understand like these articles are coming out saying these are the 4. I'm not sold on that. I think there's a lot of. I think they're really kind of considering all options. I think
and they would have to be if those are the 4 that they're really considering. It's like,
yeah, no, I don't. I mean, obviously those people are in contention. Obviously, like, they're considering these people for sure, but there's outsiders. Absolutely.
I still don't think that really any of them are CEO valued. I'm sorry, they're not. I'm not saying that they're not good at their jobs. I'm not saying that they're very intelligent in a business, but to run a global company like the Walt Disney Company, you have to have certain kind of chops. And I know people would argue with me of saying, okay, well, look at Bob Iger. I get it, but he's still making the company go afloat. Look at the stock price right now. I can't see, just hypothetically, if it was going to be one out of these 4 candidates, I don't really see not one of them holding the company up afloat. I feel like that would be a Chapek move all over again.
It'd be tough, man. It'd be tough. Go ahead, Seymour.
Oh, I was just going to ask you. I sent you a link to a video that CNBC did with the ex-CEO of Morgan Stanley. And I was wondering if we can react it live out of the blue.
If I can what? I'm sorry.
React to it. If we can react to it out of the blue.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You send it to my DMs.
Yes.
Give me just a moment. And is it a video or just an article?
It's a post that CNBC posted, but there's a video on there.
Oh,
and
okay.
I feel like if we reacted to this, it'll give us better perspective of what's happening.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let me go ahead and I'm going to pull this up. Give me 1 second.
I know I'm being spontaneous, but we're doing it live.
We're doing it live. We're doing it live. No, I like this. I like this. Let me just I'll pull this up real quick, and we'll go for it, man. I'm very curious what this is. Just a moment, and I'll pull up the screen.
We're very spontaneous on this channel, so
yes, sir. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we're gonna play it, and then we're gonna react to it. And it's let me see. It's just a couple minutes. So here we go.
The argument, and we can get to succession in a moment, really centers around the underperformance of Disney's stock against the S&P, against its competitors. With most of the current board, I know you are the newest member, but the rest of the current board has been there.
Well, I think that's pretty backward looking. I mean, look at year to date. I think the stock's up 29-30% year to date. So, you got to see things through the fullness of time. Imagine taking a company that its business is bringing people into parks, putting them on cruises, having them watch movies in movie theaters, and going through a period like we went through with COVID. At the same time, there was massive transformation going on in the linear to streaming businesses. So there was clearly a period of major disruption in this industry. And I think what Bob and the team are doing is obviously turning that around. It's evidenced by the performance in the stock.
Well, the stock has also jumped since last October when it was revealed that Trian was going to force a proxy fight. It's debatable how much of the stock performance has to do with that, James. But to your point, against the media peers, 70% of the profit in this company is parks. So why the underperformance over the last, 5, 3, 1 year?
Well, again, I'm not, obviously I'm not going to talk about the history of Disney. What I'm focused on is the future and the plan for the future. And if you look at it, I think what Bob is doing with the focus on the creative side and particularly quality over volume, what he's done for shareholders. I mean, the dividend was increased 50% last year, and there's a new buyback in place. What he's done in the transformation that's taking place at ESPN and the multi-year, multi-decade investment that's been put forward for parks and cruises. It's incredibly exciting, the future. So I think a lot of this fight seems to be looking backwards. I'm more interested in why I joined the board is looking forwards.
Okay, interesting clip.
I just have to say just really quick.
Sure.
That's why the stock jumped up, because of the proxy battle. Does this reporter live under a rock?
Well, it really jumped after the last quarterly earnings call, and I was told by people on X that it would go down again immediately after because it's just a bump. And here we are in the end of March, almost April, and it's still, not only has it maintained those gains, but it's built upon those gains. But go ahead, Seymour. What are your thoughts on this whole clip and situation?
It's basically what I've been saying, right? Everyone's looking in the past. And even though the past of the last 5 years was Bob Chapek, nobody's recognizing that what Disney's doing right now for the future has been improving. And like I mentioned, the buybacks, the dividends, right, the cost cutting, they're all in there. And even this guy right here, he's on the succession plan. He understands what's happening. He understands that you're going to have to find a good CEO. But he's been saying everyone's looking backwards. As if whoa, we don't want Bob Iger. He's done a bad job. Has he? His track record hasn't shown that. And that's what we've been discussing in this video all throughout the whole time was his track record shows.
And it just seems like people don't want to move on. They want to keep it in the past of what was going on. When 2020 came and the pandy came and the shutdown came and Bob Iger left abruptly, gave it to Chapek. Yes, we get it. Iger made a tremendous boo-boo of giving it to Chapek, the most ill-equipped person that you could possibly give CEO. I'm sorry, I was never a Chapek fan, even when he was chairman of the the parks. I'm not saying him as a person, but running the company, no. And then again, I will say Iger for giving that over to him abruptly and what have you, or even to, having the parks closed for X amount of days, what have you. I get it. No one knew what was going to even become of until 2020 hit. No one knew how to react to whatever. No one knew how to handle it. Was it a major mess? Absolutely. But are we going to, we're now in 2024, but we're still going to continue having the mindset of 2020. It's like, can we get past it and move on and see what the future holds? That's what the whole plan of what the Walt Disney Company is about. It's moving forward. Keep moving forward. Well,
and this woman, this contributor, the host on CNBC keeps saying Disney's underperforming its peers, but we just had a graph earlier on the show showing that isn't the case.
Again, she must be living under a rock.
Well, she has I think, and then look, I this is what I've been saying in Seymour and our friend Hedge on Twitter too, where it's like CNBC is not your friend, Bob. Okay,
no,
like they have a vested interest in taking you down, or this is the competition, your fiercest competition. You're sitting there and it's like, I don't get it. I don't know why he continues to walk into that, but he does it every single time. You're the biggest media company in the world with the Walt Disney Company. You can't go on ABC News or some other entity that's not owned by your biggest competitor who clearly has a vendetta against you. Go ahead, Seymour.
You could have gone on Bloomberg. There's other places. I don't see him on there. I don't. But yeah. According to her points, though, in the last 5 years, Disney outpaced. I think. Well, it keeps changing, but last time I checked, Disney outpaced Comcast, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Fox. The only company that outpaced Disney was Netflix in the last 5 years, and everyone kept saying like, "Oh, Disney has go broke. Everything's the stock went down." I'm like, they outpaced everyone except for Netflix. And Netflix did really well. I think it went up like 80% in the last 5 years. But
wow.
But they're more of it's almost like a tech company where they have a high margin business providing a streaming service. But Disney's in second place. And then you have Comcast, and then you have Warner Brothers, Paramount, Fox all just falling down and dying. Yeah. They're not doing so well. And I don't think Warner Brothers and Paramount it's the company we see now is gonna be here for very long.
Oh, that's interesting. For Warner and Paramount?
Yeah, I don't believe. Yeah, you can see this. There's a reason why the stock is going down. Sometimes in the short term, it's just voting, right? But in the long term, if you're down like 90%, 75% in the last 5 years, something's wrong. And it's because they have just a lot of debt, and the movie theater business is not a high margin business anymore. And Comcast is now changing their tactics and, moving into the theme park business like Disney and expand its flywheel. Because that's now like a high margin business, but these movies are not making as much money as they used to. And they need to do something because Comcast Peacock service is not that great. Paramount's not that great. Max is not that bad, but everything else, it's like, at least in terms of the numbers, meh.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff, man. There's just so much going on with this. It's gonna be a wild few days. We'll get you back on, Seymour. We're gonna talk about this annual shareholder meeting. Once we got all the information, we can kind of digest it, and we'll bring it out. We'll analyze it. I'm just I'm telling you, everyone's on pins and needles. I get a lot of DMs. Oh, gee, you think Pels is gonna win? You think he's gonna win? Everyone's like, a lot of Disney fans are concerned about this. You know what I'm saying?
I get those DMs as well.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah.
A lot of Disney fans are concerned about it, but we'll see how it all pans out. But Seymour, I want to thank you, brother, for coming on. It's always a pleasure talking shop with you, nerding out. If you can remind everybody where they could find you on social media, sir.
Yeah, you can find me on X at Mr. Seymour Duck.
There he is, Mr. Seymour Duck. Make sure you follow him. He does fantastic analysis on Disney, but not just that, with Nintendo, and even from like a fan perspective. You want to just talk, you want to nerd out about Nintendo or any of it.
Nintendo and a lot of Japanese companies now.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So make sure you follow Mr. Duck on X, the Italiano. if you could let everybody at home know where they could find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There he is. There he is. Thank you all so much for watching. Comment down below with all your opinions on everything we talked about. I know that the DeSantis versus Disney thing is a very politically charged conversation. We welcome all opinions, though. If you are pro DeSantis and you want to give your perspective in the comments, absolutely, just do it civilly. That's all we ask. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, we welcome all opinions here. We would love to hear from you. Also on the Disney financials, the annual shareholder meeting, the CEO succession, just everything we talked about today. Comment down below. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye, everybody.
세상이 누구에게나 공평하게 추악해.